My name is Allison Ford. I'm 28, and until recently, I thought I understood what it meant to balance love, family, and responsibility. My boyfriend, Stephen Garcia, 30, has been my anchor for the past 3 years, a steady presence in a world that often feels like it's teetering on chaos. We have a small, cozy apartment in Seattle, the kind of place that smells faintly of fresh coffee in the mornings and old books in the evenings. Everything about our life feels measured, predictable, safe. And then there's my younger sister, Mallory Ford, 25. I love her, of course, but love in her case has always come with a side of chaos. Mallory isn't difficult in the usual sibling way. She's not constantly arguing or competing, but she only calls when she wants something, and she's mastered the art of making every need feel urgent. Growing up, she was the artistic one, destined, at least in her mind, to be a famous designer. I, on the other hand, was the practical one, the accountant, the one with a steady paycheck. Guess which one of us could actually pay rent? 2 years ago, Mallory went through one of her crisis phases. She quit her retail job to focus entirely on her design portfolio. Translation: she spent entire days scrolling Pinterest and Instagram, claiming inspiration. Naturally, she couldn't afford her apartment because she'd maxed out her credit cards on fabric, sketchbooks, and supplies she never used. Mom was already helping her financially, and Dad had passed 5 years prior. That's when I stepped in. Enter Allison Ford, responsible sister and co-signer extraordinaire. She begged me to co-sign her downtown one-bedroom apartment, $1,800 a month, and swore she had freelance work lined up. Showed me invoices, samples of designs, even crying about being homeless if I didn't help. I didn't know then that some of it was fabricated. Against every instinct screaming at me to say no, I signed. For the past 2 years, I've basically been subsidizing her life, not directly paying rent, but lending her money she never repaid, buying groceries when she texted that she was surviving on ramen, covering utilities when they threatened to shut off. I estimate I gave her around $8,000 in total. And, like most families, I didn't keep receipts, because of course family doesn't need proof, right? I rationalized it. She's my sister. She needs me. I tried to ignore the gnawing frustration, the quiet resentment that built up every time I saw another late-night Pinterest spree or a post of Mallory flaunting her creative success. I told myself it was worth it. That peace of mind, that small, smug sense of having done the right thing, was enough. And then September came. That's when everything started to unravel. I had started dating Steven seriously, and it felt different this time. Healthy, balanced. He wasn't the kind of guy who expected me to drop everything for him, and he actually listened. For the first time in years, I felt like I could have a life outside of Mallory's endless emergencies. Mallory found out through Mom. She didn't congratulate me, not even a smile. Instead, she exploded. Angry texts, frantic phone calls, accusations that I was prioritizing some random woman over my family, which of course wasn't true, but it didn't matter. I tried to be the adult. I went to her apartment, carrying coffee and donuts, hoping for a calm conversation. I explained that I couldn't keep being her emergency fund, that I had my own life now, responsibilities, and yes, my own happiness to consider. I asked her to understand boundaries. I asked her to see me not just as her ATM, but as her sister. She laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A bitter, incredulous laugh that felt like it cut through my chest. "You're choosing her over me?" she shouted. "After everything I've sacrificed, everything I've done for you, you're just going to pick some girl and ignore me?" I froze, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mallory, what sacrifices? Name one time you've ever helped me with anything." Silence. And then screaming. "You've always resented me for being creative. You're just another boring corporate drone. I don't need you. You don't exist for me anymore." She grabbed my phone, blocked her own number, and demanded I leave. I watched her do the same on Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. It was surreal. The person I'd shared a lifetime with had suddenly erased me from existence. The final scream, as she slammed the door, still echoes in my mind. "I never want to see your sellout face again." I sat in my car for the long moment trying to process it, and then something strange happened. Relief. A weird, intoxicating sense of peace. The trash had taken itself out. The problem? Her lease was due for renewal in December, and as her co-signer, they'd need my signature. She had blocked me everywhere, every number, every social platform, every email, gone. That night, I went home, made a simple dinner, and blocked her everywhere too. Why not? She started it. I even set up a new email filter that sent anything from her apartment straight to a folder I'd never check. Changed my phone number, shared it only with people who actually mattered. September passed. October was blissful. No frantic calls, no guilt trips. I took Stephen on a weekend getaway with the money I wasn't giving Mallory anymore. It felt liberating. But the storm was far from over. Mallory had underestimated the consequences of cutting off the person co-signing her apartment. She thought she could navigate life without me. She was about to learn how wrong she was. And that's when the first tremors of chaos started to appear. Just faint hints at first, like shadows at the edge of a sunny day. I didn't know it yet, but life was about to remind me that boundaries, once tested, will demand attention in ways you never expect. By late September, I had begun to feel the weight of years spent covering for Mallory. Every text from her demanding money felt heavier than the last. Every emergency, I had to drop everything for chipped away at my patience. And for the first time, I decided enough was enough. I remember walking up to her apartment with 2 cups of coffee and a small box of pastries, thinking, this is it. Today I set boundaries. I knocked, waited, and when she opened the door, her usual flurry of colorful scarves and paint-streaked fingers greeted me. I tried to smile. Morning, Mallory. Can we talk for a few minutes? Her eyes narrowed. Talk about what? About money, boundaries, our lives, I said carefully. I can't keep covering everything for you. I have my own life. Stephen and I have plans, responsibilities. I need you to understand that I can't be your emergency fund forever. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Oh, I see. So now I'm supposed to feel bad because you finally decided to have a life? You think you're the only one with needs? You've been ignoring me for months. I tried to stay calm. Mallory, it's not about ignoring you. It's about fairness. You've asked for thousands of dollars over the past 2 years. I've lent it. I've covered bills. You've never paid me back. Excuse me? Her voice rose. I've sacrificed so much. You don't see it because you're too busy in your boring little corporate world. You're jealous because I'm creative and I'm living my dreams. I took a deep breath. No, Mallory. I'm proud of your creativity. But when you block me from contact, ignore responsibilities, and act as if the world owes you, I can't keep bailing you out. I'm not your bank. I'm your sister. And sisters should have boundaries too. The words barely left my mouth before she lunged at me metaphorically, if not physically. Boundaries? You've never had boundaries with me. You've been controlling my life. You're choosing some random guy over me, over family. You're dead to me. It was surreal. I froze, trying to find a rational way in, but she had already decided. I don't need you, Allison. You don't exist for me anymore. She grabbed my phone from the table and, with deliberate cruelty, blocked herself, then blocked me. Every social account, every possible method of communication, gone. I stood there, stunned. And then something unexpected happened. Calm. My chest, which had been tight with years of resentment and obligation, loosened. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to tiptoe around her chaos anymore. I didn't have to be the first responder to her every whim. Driving home, I thought about the lease. December was coming up, and as her co-signer, they would need my signature for renewal. She had just erased me from existence. Every number, every social account, every possible way to reach me, gone. And yet, a strange sense of satisfaction settled in. The consequences of her impulsiveness would soon land entirely on her. That evening, I blocked her on everything I hadn't already blocked. Emails, social media, even the text filter I set up to automatically send anything from her to a folder I never checked. I changed my phone number and shared it only with people I trusted. September ended quietly, almost blissfully. October was better, peaceful. Stephen and I took a weekend trip with the money I was no longer handing to Mallory. We laughed without guilt, relaxed without constant interruption. My apartment felt lighter, freer. But the calm was deceptive. Every moment of relief was shadowed by the knowledge that Mallory's lease renewal was looming. She had no plan. She thought she could navigate life without me. She was about to discover the hard way that I was the only reason her apartment even existed. I'll admit there was a thrill in that thought. Months of manipulation, excuses, and entitlement had led to this precarious moment, and I was finally free of the immediate stress. Yet somewhere deep down, a tiny voice whispered guilt. I loved my sister, and I knew the consequences could be severe, but the boundaries I was finally setting were necessary. Then came the first signs of panic. A text from Mom, tentative, worried. Allison, Mallory's asking about the lease. She says she can't reach you. Please, can you help? I stared at the message for a long time, scrolling through memories of past crises. Every time I tried to enforce a boundary, Mallory responded with rage, guilt-tripping, or emotional theatrics. I thought about all the times I'd lent her money, bought groceries, covered bills. I thought about Stephen, about my own sanity. And I realized I would not be her safety net anymore. Not now, not ever again. The next few weeks were quiet from my side. I focused on work, on Stephen, on finally building a life that didn't revolve around constant rescue missions. The peace was exhilarating. But the storm was brewing, just out of sight. Mallory didn't know how badly she'd cornered herself, and I knew that December would be the moment when her choices came crashing down. All I could do was wait and watch. Boundaries, once enforced, have a way of changing everything, sometimes painfully, sometimes mercifully, and I had just set mine. November arrived with an almost eerie quiet. For the first time in years, my phone didn't ping with frantic texts demanding money, emergency rides, or last-minute favors. I had never realized how much mental space Mallory occupied until it was gone. Stephen noticed, too. We spent lazy mornings together, drank coffee on the balcony, and even started planning a small weekend getaway. Life felt normal, peaceful, almost blissful. Meanwhile, Mallory was oblivious, or so she thought. She had effectively cut herself off from every method of contacting me. Emails bounced, calls went unanswered, social media was blocked. The irony, I admit, was delicious. She had declared that I no longer existed, and in a way, she was right. I had become someone she could no longer rely on. But reality has a cruel way of enforcing consequences, and it struck in early December. I was sitting in the kitchen with Stephen, laughing over something ridiculous he'd done with a coworker, when my phone vibrated with a call from Mom. She sounded frantic, her voice trembling. Allison, Mallory, she's being evicted. The lease, she didn't get your signature. I felt a strange mix of vindication and apprehension. Wait, what happened? Mom explained. The apartment complex had been trying to reach both of us for the lease renewal since mid-November. Standard procedure. Both signatures required by December 1st, no exceptions. Mallory, thinking I would magically receive the notices, had ignored all deadlines. When she finally called the management company on November 30th, it was too late. They had already leased the apartment to someone else starting January 1st. The chaos in Mom's voice painted a vivid picture. Mallory had arrived at the leasing office, hysterical, begging for an exception. Policy was ironclad. No cosigner, no apartment, no exceptions. And now she had 30 days to vacate. Mom begged me to intervene. Allison, please, can't you help her? I paused. I remembered all the times I had bailed her out, all the money I had lent her, the groceries, the utilities, the unpaid debts I had covered. And I remembered her screams, her accusations, her declaration that I no longer existed. She made her choice, I said finally. I honored it. Mom was silent, her voice barely audible. But she's your sister. And she told me I didn't exist, I replied. I think that settles it. The next day, as expected, Mallory's panic escalated. Somehow she got my new number from Mom. Thanks, Mom, and the texts started rolling in. At first they were furious. You have to help me find a new place. This is your fault. Legal threats followed. I'll sue you for sabotaging my housing. Then came the guilt trips. I'm going to be homeless because of you. How can you sleep at night knowing your sister will be on the streets? Even invoking Dad's memory. Dad would be ashamed. Almost comically, I remembered Dad working tirelessly to support us, and Mallory had once called him a wage slave for not following his passion. I chuckled quietly, but didn't respond. Then came the negotiation attempts. I'll pay you back if you co-sign one more time. I have a big commission coming. The same lies, recycled. Desperation set in. Please, I'll do anything. I was wrong. I'll change. I sat back and watched, partly amused, partly satisfied. She had no alternative co-signers. Uncle Roy remembered a $500 loan from years ago. Cousin Dimitri laughed at the idea. Even Grandma refused. And when she tried to qualify on her own, the truth hit. Her freelance business was a house of cards. The clients she had claimed to have were mostly fake invoices. Her actual income was sporadic Etsy sales and a couple of small jobs that barely covered $200 a month. Her dream of being a self-sufficient designer? Crumbling. It was poetic justice. The same sister who had called me boring and uncreative was now facing the consequences of her own choices. She had blocked the person keeping her afloat, and now the floor had dropped beneath her feet. And through it all, I finally experienced something rare: peace. For the first time in years, I didn't have to check my bank account anxiously. I didn't jump when the phone rang. I didn't feel guilty for enjoying my life. Stephen and I spent evenings planning small adventures, dinners, walks along the waterfront, and quiet weekends together. The money I hadn't sent to Mallory funded experiences, not stress. Of course, not everyone agreed with my choice. Friends of Mallory called me abusive, controlling, toxic. One even argued that because Mallory was supposedly creative and neurodivergent, I had no right to enforce boundaries. I calmly asked for her diagnosis. None provided. I remained silent. The world doesn't owe her excuses. Meanwhile, the lease renewal date approached like a ticking clock. Mallory's frantic attempts to reach me failed. Notices went unanswered. The apartment was released, and I, sitting in my little sanctuary with Stephen, watched karma unfold as a quietly triumphant spectator. It was a strange mix of guilt, relief, and vindication. I loved my sister, but she had made her choice. I honored mine, and in doing so, I finally started living my life on my own terms. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time in years, I wasn't at the center of it. I had boundaries, I had peace, and I had the satisfaction of watching someone else finally navigate the consequences of their own decisions. The first week of December felt surreal. For the first time in years, I wasn't being pulled into Mallory's chaos. Stephen and I made pancakes on Sunday mornings, laughed over small mistakes, and simply existed without the constant background hum of emergencies. Yet, I knew Mallory's reckoning was inevitable. It began with a series of calls and texts from Mom. Each one grew more dramatic than the last. Mallory had been turned away at her apartment, homeless, frantic, and panicking. I stayed silent. She had declared I didn't exist. Now she was facing what that truly meant. Apparently, Mallory had attempted every desperate route possible. She had gone to friends, her ex-boyfriend, extended family, everyone she could think of, but each door slammed shut. Uncle Roy remembered a loan she had never repaid. Cousin Dimitri laughed at the very idea of helping. Grandma refused outright. Even her fleeting freelance clients couldn't rescue her. Then, the unthinkable happened. Mallory showed up at Mom's door at 11 p.m., clutching her belongings, sobbing uncontrollably. Her beat-up car was filled with all the remnants of her downtown life: sketchbooks, fabrics, half-empty paint tubes, and the expensive dreams she had built on my money. Mom, ever the mediator, let her in, but on conditions: get a job, pay $400 per month in rent, no overnight guests, and absolutely no pets. The first night back, I got an earful from Mom about Mallory's reaction. She had spent hours ranting, blaming me for her eviction, insisting the apartment management should have reached me, accusing friends of betrayal, and even claiming society was conspiring against her creative freedom. Not once did she admit her own role in blocking me, ignoring deadlines, or fabricating income. Mallory's sense of entitlement was staggering. Even homeless and desperate, she refused to acknowledge her mistakes. She blamed everyone but herself. Friends and acquaintances were all toxic, ex-boyfriends were cruel, and employers were oppressive. Her narrative was entirely externalized. Any accountability was unacceptable. For me, watching this unfold was oddly satisfying. Every boundary I had enforced, every ounce of patience finally recognized and acted upon, was paying off in real time. I didn't gloat, but the truth was there. Her problems were now hers alone to solve. I could finally focus on my life, my relationship, and my own mental well-being. Of course, Mallory tried to manipulate those around her. Friends called me abusive for refusing to co-sign or lend money. One argued that because Mallory was supposedly neurodivergent, I was cruel. I asked for proof. None was provided. I didn't respond. The drama of entitlement was no longer my burden. Her temporary stay with Mom became a series of clashes. Mallory tried to organize creative projects at Mom's house, ignored rules about noise and guests, and failed to contribute consistently to rent. Even a simple job at Starbucks, chosen by Mom to enforce responsibility, became a stage for rebellion. She called out sick frequently, stayed up until 4 a.m., working on self-directed art projects, and generally tested every rule set before her. Yet, through it all, Mom remained patient, adjusting her approach gradually, finally realizing that enabling behaviors had fueled Mallory's reckless sense of independence. She even began therapy to address patterns she had unintentionally reinforced. Meanwhile, I thrived. Stephen and I spent evenings planning a quiet life together, free from financial anxiety or constant crises. We laughed at the little absurdities of life. I slept without tension, checked my bank account without dread, and finally experienced a freedom I hadn't realized I was missing. Mallory's attempts to reinsert herself into my life continued sporadically. A new phone number, frantic emails, even threats of social media exposure. But by now, I had boundaries solidly in place. I didn't respond. I had learned that real consequences are sometimes the only lessons that stick. By the end of the month, Mallory was still technically under Mom's roof, but facing the tangible realities of adult life: rules, responsibility, and accountability. Starbucks wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Paying $400 rent wasn't optional. It was expected. Creative projects had limits, and Mom's patience had a hard edge now. Through all this, one truth became crystal clear. Peace doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from asserting your boundaries and letting the world adjust to them. And for the first time in years, I was experiencing it fully. The irony wasn't lost on me. The sister who had once accused me of being boring and selfish was now humbled, facing the reality of her choices. And I was thriving, happy, free, and finally living my own life. By January, the chaos of the past few months had settled into something resembling normalcy. Mallory was still living with Mom, under strict conditions: a part-time job, $400 in rent, no pets, and a curfew that even I would have found restrictive. But she was learning, slowly, that the world doesn't bend to entitlement. Every failed attempt to bypass responsibility had consequences, and for the first time, she couldn't blame me. For me, life had transformed. The anxiety that had clung to every call and text for years was gone. Stephen and I spent quiet evenings together, planning small adventures and laughing without guilt. Our relationship was thriving because it wasn't overshadowed by my sister's crises. Mallory tried, predictably, to manipulate and reinsert herself into my life. A new number, frantic texts, and even vague threats about social media exposure appeared in December. But the boundaries I had established were firm. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. For the first time, I understood that not enabling someone isn't cruelty. It's survival. Mom had taken steps to heal herself as well. Therapy had helped her recognize enabling patterns she hadn't realized were harming both of us. She enforced boundaries with Mallory consistently, which was a stark contrast to years of blind indulgence. Slowly, Mallory began to understand that privileges she once took for granted required effort and accountability. Interestingly, the lessons extended beyond Mallory. I had learned, finally, that being compassionate doesn't mean being a doormat. That love, even familial love, has limits. And that setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sane. Mallory's artistic dreams were no longer the excuse for financial chaos. She had to face the mundane realities of adulthood. Starbucks shifts, paying rent, following rules at Mom's house. These were small steps toward real independence. And though it frustrated her, each consequence reinforced the lesson that the world doesn't cater to fantasy. Meanwhile, Stephen and I began planning a proper getaway, a trip to Japan we had postponed countless times. I smiled, thinking about the irony. Years of bailing out my sister had kept me trapped in a cycle of anxiety and obligation. Now, free from constant crises, I could finally breathe, laugh, and enjoy life without guilt. The last attempt at contact from Mallory came a few weeks ago. She had gotten a new number and texted, "I know you hate me, but I really need to talk. It's important." I didn't respond. According to Mom, the important topic was a car loan. Her old Civic had finally given up, and she assumed I'd bail her out again. Not this time. The irony is almost poetic. Mallory, who had spent years calling me controlling, selfish, and unfeeling, had now faced the reality of boundaries and consequences. And me, I was thriving. Credit score intact, relationships stronger than ever, mental health finally stable. Looking back, I realized that the best revenge, if you want to call it that, was simply living well. I wasn't petty, spiteful, or vengeful. I simply existed within my own limits, enforced my boundaries, and let life take its course. I could hear the echoes of the past, the angry texts, the frantic phone calls, but they no longer mattered. Mallory had made her choices. I had made mine. And in the quiet aftermath, I found a life that was calm, joyful, and fully mine. Sometimes people don't learn lessons until the consequences arrive. Mallory had learned hers, and I had finally learned what it meant to prioritize myself without guilt, to love without being consumed by chaos, and to thrive when the world had once demanded my surrender. For anyone reading this, take it from me. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're liberation. Protect them fiercely, because sometimes letting someone hit rock bottom is the only way both of you can rise. And that's exactly what happened. Life is good, peaceful, balanced, and fully my own.